David stood in the dimly lit hallway of the old apartment building, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the mop. The scent of disinfectant filled the air, mixing strangely with the musty smell of old carpets. He had taken this Saturday job to make extra cash. But today, as the sun peeked through the narrow window near the end of the hall, chasing shadows away, he felt an odd sense of purpose in his work. Cleaning the hallway wasn't what he considered a dream job. He had aspirations, big dreams of becoming a tech developer, but those dreams felt distant when he looked at the grime and stains on the floor. It was in this moment he whispered to himself, "Just keep going, David." He picked up his mop and began sliding it along the tiles, trying to ignore the flickering fluorescent light overhead. Time slipped by as he scrubbed. Every stroke of the mop felt like a small victory against the dullness of life. Each time he flicked the water away, he imagined he was washing away a piece of his own uncertainty. He wanted to feel accomplished, wanted to believe that this was leading somewhere. As he finished the last part of the hallway, something caught his eye, a reflection in the polished surface of the floor. He leaned down, wiping away some stray water, and saw it, a nameplate at the bottom of the wall near the doors. It was worn but still visible, like an old photo that refused to fade. His heart raced. "That's my name," he murmured softly, almost in disbelief. He knelt down, staring at the name. It was like a spotlight shining on him. David had always dreamed of making something of himself, creating a legacy that mattered, but this seemed too surreal. He knew the name like he knew his own life story. He had grown up right here in this very building where his parents had raised him. Memories flooded back, the laughter of his childhood, the friends he'd made, the many times he had run through this very hallway. This was home, and yet he had been so eager to leave. He had wanted to escape the smallness of it all, pursuing life that sparkled with excitement. David stood back up, feeling a rush of nostalgia. It was strange to think that the building still carried his name, a reminder of the boy he used to be, full of dreams, curiosity, and possibilities. Emotion welled up inside him. What had he become? A man who mopped hallways for pocket change, chasing a dream that felt increasingly like a shadow slipping away. As he straightened up, David touched the nameplate again, feeling the rough surface beneath his fingertips. It was a relic of his past, a piece of his upbringing solidified in wood and metal. All those years of wanting to shake off his roots, and here they were staring back at him. He felt a strange mix of pride and shame. He took a deep breath. Perhaps the building could be a reminder, not a weight. The dreams he had once held were still there, buried under debts, unfulfilled commitments, and the ordinary grind of life. But the nameplate signaled something else, a connection. He glanced down the hallway, memories flooding his mind. The endless games of tag, the Sunday afternoons spent playing video games, the warmth of his mother's cooking wafting through the doors. Each memory painted a fuller picture of who he was. But life had changed. He had moved out, trying to find a new path, a new identity. David's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, checking messages from friends about weekend plans. They were out exploring new bars or attending events he had to miss because of work. He hesitated, feeling that familiar pang of longing mixed with regret. Would they understand why he was still here, cleaning this building? Would they even care? The thought faded as quickly as it came. He shoved the phone back into his pocket and took a step back, looking at the nameplate once more. This was more than just a reminder of a simpler time. It was an invitation. What if he could find a way to merge his past with his present? A spark ignited within him. Maybe he could do something with this, not just for himself, but for others who felt lost, trapped in a life they never chose. The hallway was quiet, save for the sound of dripping water from the mop in his hands. It echoed, almost reminding him of the footsteps he used to hear as a child racing down these very halls. They were a part of him. But wasn't it time to turn that nostalgia into action? The name McKinley could mean something again. He wondered what it could become. Could it mean a community project? Could he rally people around the building, get together on weekends, clean up the place, and bring families back? As excitement brewed in his mind, David rushed to the side of the building where he could see the small park across the street. Kids were laughing, playing on swings and slides, and the community felt alive in a way that he couldn't remember. That energy tugged at him, fueled his desire to reconcile his past and present. Suddenly, he heard the echo of footsteps behind him. A little girl named Zoe, one of the children from the building, came running in, her arms swinging freely. "Mr. David." She called out, her voice bright and cheerful. He turned to her, trying to hide the warm smile spreading across his face. "Yeah, I'm just trying to make it nice for everyone," he replied, feeling that spark of inspiration move through him once more. Zoe asked, her big eyes shining with enthusiasm. "Of course," he said, feeling a rush of energy that he hadn't felt in a long time. David thought about how adults often lost their playful spirit in the grind of life. But here, with her innocence and eagerness, his heart felt lighter. Together they mopped, each splash of water a new possibility. David found himself telling her stories about the old days, how he used to race down this very hallway on his bicycle, and how the tenants all knew each other back then. Zoe listened with rapt attention, her face lighting up with each tale. As they worked, David envisioned gatherings in the hallway, a community cleanup day, potlucks, storytelling nights. What if he could bring everyone together? Maybe he wasn't just cleaning, he was building something, nurturing the community that had nurtured him. After finishing the hall, they sat together on the stairs, panting a bit, their work complete. Zoe's eyes sparkled with excitement. She asked. David nodded, feeling the warmth of her enthusiasm wash over him. Absolutely, we can make it a regular thing. You can help me plan it and we'll invite everyone. Her grin was infectious and David felt a smile creeping onto his face. This was the kind of work that mattered, not just mopping but connecting, bringing life back to a place that had been dim for too long. As David looked back at the nameplate, he realized it wasn't just his name. It stood for the legacy of everyone who had lived here before him. It symbolized the community, the history, and the potential for a future that could be bright again. He was more than just David from the McKinley building. He was now David, a part of something bigger. Days turned into weeks and the cleanup day became a reality. Neighbors came, sharing food and stories, laughter echoing through the hallways. Word spread and old friends reconnected as new friendships blossomed. David stood back and watched, his heart swelling with pride and joy. In that moment he understood, you can always go back home. Sometimes all it takes is a little cleaning to reveal the beauty that was always there. David had discovered something vital in that dusty hallway. Calling it home didn't mean being trapped by the past. It meant embracing it wholeheartedly and using it to pave the way for a better tomorrow. As the sun set over the building, David felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He had cleaned the hallway, yes, but he had created a safe space for dreams to flourish once more. And as he looked up at the nameplate, he knew whatever lay ahead, he would carry a piece of this moment in his heart forever. The mop glided smoothly across the floor, but David froze in his tracks when he saw the nameplate on the wall. It was worn like an old postcard that had faded over time. He blinked, his heart racing. "That's my name," he whispered, the sound barely escaping his lips. He had taken this cleaning job in the old apartment building as a way to hustle some extra cash while he searched for something better. Maybe a tech position, something that would get him out of his rut. But right now, scrubbing this hallway felt far from what he imagined his life would be. Yet here he was, the irony of it hitting him hard, cleaning the very building that carried his name. His thoughts drifted back to childhood. Growing up, this was home. The hallway echoed with memories, friends laughing, kids playing, the smell of his mother's cooking wafting through the shared kitchens. But he craved bigger things, better things. Leaving this place had been synonymous with freedom for him. But now, looking at that nameplate, he felt buried under layers of nostalgia and regret. David stood up straight, trying to shake off the wave of emotions. He had a job to do. The floor beneath him was still a mess, and he needed to finish up before nightfall. Yet that name kept pulling at him like a string attached to his heart. He tried to focus, pushing the mop forward, the splashes of water breaking the silence of the empty hallway. But his mind kept wandering. What was it about this place that kept him tied to it? Was he still David McKinley just because his name was on the wall? Or was he simply a man who cleaned hallways for loose change? Feeling restless, David let out a frustrated sigh. It was supposed to be a menial task, a way to make ends meet, but the mere sight of that name was transforming the mundane into something deep and heavy. What did it mean for him, really? Would he always just be a part of this old building's story, or could he redefine it? More memories flooded back. He could still hear the joyful screams of children playing outside, and suddenly he wanted to do something. Anything. For a moment, the idea sparked faint hope. Maybe he could bring those kids back. He thought of Zoe, the little girl who often waved to him when he cleaned, with her bright smile and infectious energy. She had dreams bursting from her tiny body like fireworks. Her spirit reminded him of the boy he once was, innocent, hopeful, and full of potential. But it wasn't just about Zoe. This building, this name David McKinley, had history. It was a symbol of togetherness. A reminder that people lived here, struggled here, hoped here. He started to feel something shift within him. He paused with the mop in his hand and looked at the nameplate again, a wave of gratitude mixing with his turmoil. That name on the wall represented a community that nurtured him. It wasn't just his name, it was a piece of a larger history, a texture of the lives entwined within these walls. With a newfound sense of purpose, he decided then and there that he would bring the community back together. But how? The thoughts swirled around in his mind. Could he organize a cleanup day, a potluck dinner, get everyone involved? His heart raced at the idea. Just then the door creaked open and an elderly woman walked in, setting down her shopping bags. Mrs. Jennings, one of the building's longtime residents, peered at him with curious eyes. "David, you're working hard, I see," she said with a hint of warmth that felt like an embrace. "Trying to make it nice for everyone," he replied, feeling the flush of commitment wash over him. Mrs. Jennings smiled, her tired eyes sparkling. "This hallway, it needs love." David nodded. "Exactly, I was thinking, what if we organized a day to clean up together?" Her eyes lit up. "That sounds fantastic. People miss the gatherings we used to have." A surge of hope rushed through David. If Mrs. Jennings was on board, then maybe others would be too. The flickering fluorescent lights above faded into the background as ideas began to flow. Maybe we could do a barbecue, he suggested. Invite everyone. Oh, I'd love that, Mrs. Jennings replied, her voice trembling with excitement. I'll bake my famous peach cobbler. As they chatted about plans, a lightness settled in David's chest. He imagined laughter, families sharing stories, kids running through the hallways playing tag. Perhaps this building with his name on it could transform back into a home again. Days turned into a week, and David threw himself into organizing the event. He posted flyers, knocking on doors, fervently discussing plans with anyone who would listen. Surprisingly, people responded. Mrs. Jennings rallied a small army of tenants who shared their own memories of the place. Soon, the entire buzz in the building shifted from indifference to excitement. The day of the event arrived. David stood nervously in the hallway, surrounded by decorations, celebratory balloons, and the smell of grilled hot dogs wafting through the air. Children rushed around, their faces painted like superheroes and princesses. Adults clustered together, laughing, exchanging recipes, and rekindling friendships lost over the years. Suddenly, he spotted Zoe bouncing around, her hands sticky with cotton candy, bursting with happiness. "Mr. David," she shouted, bounding over to show him the rainbow swirl painted on her cheek. David knelt down to her level, bubbles of laughter erupting from their exchange. "That looks amazing," she giggled, her joy contagious, and for the first time in a long while, David felt lighter. The hallway didn't just sparkle, it shimmered with energy, warmth, and connection. As the sun began to set, giving the space a golden hue, David looked around. The laughter echoed off the walls, the chatter filled the air with life. He felt a swell of gratitude and triumph. The name that once felt like a weight now glowed with vibrancy. People gathered to tell stories, passing the mic around as laughter mingled with memories. David found himself sharing stories of his childhood, how he had raced through the halls, climbing the stairs 3 at a time, filled with dreams that felt limitless. The audience listened, engaged, reminding him of why he had loved this place to begin with. Then, in the middle of the festivities, an unexpected moment occurred. A local journalist showed up, intrigued by the talk of the revival in the old building. Her presence brought a certain professionalism that made him nervous, but she was kind, taking notes and asking about the motivation behind his efforts. David, standing with his heart pounding, shared, "I just wanted to remind everyone that this building is still alive. We're all part of a larger story. My name on the wall isn't just a label, it's a reminder of our roots, our connection." That simple statement resonated with many present, a spark igniting understanding among them. And as twilight deepened, residents connected over shared stories, laughter, and pies. When the gathering ended, David stood at the door, watching families trickle back into their homes. He could still hear their laughter echoing off the halls, feel that warmth wrapping around him like a long-lost embrace. He glanced at the nameplate again, but this time it didn't feel heavy. It felt filled with connection, community life. He was no longer just cleaning the hallway, he had transformed it into a corridor of hope, bridging past with present. In that moment, pursuing quick cash seemed trivial. He found purpose, ignited an old flame of dreams within those walls. The idea that he could have taken a path away from this place vanished. He had come back full circle, grounding himself in the belief that legacy wasn't about escaping where you came from. It was about redefining it, breathing life into it, and nurturing those connections that fueled who you are. As he pushed open the door to his own apartment later that night, the echoes of joy still dancing in the air, David felt renewed. He wasn't just David McKinley anymore, he was part of something bigger, a beacon of belonging and hope. He thought about how, in those simple yet profound moments, he had discovered a truth. Cleaning the hallway had led him home again. David stared at the floor, the mop in his hand dripping water onto the tiles. He had always thought of cleaning as a mindless chore, but today felt different. The Saturday morning, the sun just beginning to slip its golden fingers through the dreary, narrow windows of the old 12-story building. As he moved the mop back and forth, he could hear the silence in the air, thick and profound. But there was something more, something weighty that had him on edge. Suddenly, his mop caught on something hard. He bent down, curious, and saw it, a nameplate on the wall. At first, it looked worn, gray in places, but as he wiped away some dust, the letters became clearer. His heart raced. David McKinley, that was his name. A rush of disbelief and nostalgia hit him all at once. He stood back, staring at it in confusion. This old building, with its cracked walls and faded paint, held his name. It felt surreal, almost like a scene from a movie where the protagonist suddenly discovers a hidden truth about themselves. But here he was, standing in the hallway he had walked down so many times as a child, the walls whispering secrets of the past. David had spent years trying to escape the shadows of this place. Since he moved out, he'd worked hard to carve his own life, ticking off goals in a list he had crafted with bright-eyed optimism. But now, this nameplate felt like a haunting echo of the boy he used to be, someone who once knew what it meant to belong. He rubbed the nameplate lightly as if it were a magic pendant that could transport him back to simpler times. Each stroke brought back memories of shouting down hallways for friends to come out to play, swiping the last cookie from the community pantry, and even the comforting smell of his mother's cooking wafting through the doors. Perhaps he had been too quick to want to leave. too focused on what lay ahead to appreciate what was right here. David looked around the empty hallway as if the walls could somehow read his thoughts. This place wasn't just a building, it held in essence a spirit that had nurtured him. But standing here alone, mopping up dirt, he couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that he had left all that behind. He sighed deeply and got back to work. The rhythmic sound of the mop slipping and sliding against the floor echoed in the silence. Memories flickered in and out of his mind like frames of an old film reel, each more vivid than the last. His heart clenched as he swept his gaze over the hallway, remembering laughter and warmth, the beautiful chaos of growing up. Just then, a small voice broke the stillness. "Mr. David." He turned to see Zoe, the spirited little girl from the second floor, her bright eyes wide with curiosity. Her pigtails bobbed energetically as she ran toward him, her charm infectious. "Yeah, I'm just making it nice for everyone," David said with a forced smile, trying to hide the wave of nostalgia that had taken hold of him. Zoe tilted her head, studying him. "Can I help? I like cleaning." Before he could respond, she grabbed a tiny broom propped up against the wall, her determination shining through her youthful exuberance. For a moment, her energy sparked something in him, a sudden urge to make this place alive again. "Sure. Let's do it together," he said, feeling a flicker of excitement. They began to work side by side, David sweeping in long strokes while Zoe danced around, sweeping crumbs and dust into small piles. Her laughter rang out, sharply contrasting with the stillness surrounding them. Slowly, the hallway transformed into a brighter space, alive with purpose. And with every stroke of the broom and splash of water, something deeper began to shift within David. As they worked, Zoe began to chatter endlessly about her favorite toys and movies. She explained how her mother used to bring her to the playground just down the street, the two of them sharing ice cream and laughter by the swings. Listening to her, David felt a strange comfort that had been absent for years. Through her stories, he glimpsed how alive the building once was, neighbors convening over shared meals, kids bonding through neighborhood antics. The joy of old friendships bubbled to the surface in his mind, revealing the truth that life didn't always lie in grand adventures. Often it thrived in simple moments like these. Zoe suddenly chimed, her eyes brightened with ideas. "We could invite everyone." For a fleeting moment, David hesitated. A party, a gathering felt like a monumental task, a risk that might lead to rejection if nobody showed up. But then he looked at her face filled with hope, anticipation, and pure excitement. In that moment, something shifted inside him. David suggested, his heartbeat quickening. "And then we throw a party." "Yes," Zoe squealed, throwing her arms in the air. The sheer joy radiating from her made his heart swell with determination. As they finished sweeping, David felt himself envisioning the party, a reunion of laughter, warmth, and memories. The very soul of the building revived. He began sketching out ideas, making mental notes of who to invite. The nerve built up inside him faded, replaced by a sense of urgency coursing through his veins. The next few days blended together as David poured himself into organizing the event. He created colorful flyers with Zoe's help, each one bursting with enthusiasm. Community cleanup and celebration. Zoe's laughter echoed as they brainstormed ideas for games and food. He knocked on doors, shouting out invitations to neighbors he hadn't spoken to in years. They were met with smiles, nods, and tentative interest. Some committed while others offered their own recipes or activities. In a matter of days, excitement began to rise like a tide. As the date of the event approached, David felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. Would they come? Was it foolish to rally the community just because a nameplate had stirred something inside him? The night before, he lay in bed, heart racing as doubts whispered into his mind, casting shadows over his resolve. Then he thought of the name, a name that carried his legacy, his history, his childhood. A name that was rooted deep within the fabric of this building and the people in it. The day of the event arrived in a whirlwind. David rushed around, setting up tables, filling them with baked goods, and stringing up lights that twinkled like stars in the hallway. With each item he placed, anticipation bubbled inside him. Zoe darted about, her energy contagious, making sure everything was perfect. Slowly, neighbors began to filter in. At first, it was just a few familiar faces, hesitant and shy. But as they gathered, a warmth radiated through the air, igniting courage and camaraderie. Laughter began to ring out, and David felt weight lift off his shoulders. It was working. He watched as kids played games, parents chatted, and the community began to mend itself thread by thread. Stories began to flow through the room, each more vibrant than the last. They were sharing not just food, but their lives, their experiences, their dreams. And then it happened. Mrs. Jennings stood up, slightly trembling but full of courage. "I remember when this place was full of life," she began, her voice strong but laced with emotion. "We were all a family in these halls." Her words struck a chord, uniting everyone. Applause broke out, and there was a renewed spirit in the air, the collective hope rising to new heights. David felt like he was part of something monumental. A wave of emotion washed over him, the hallway shimmering with new life, with magic he thought he'd lost. As the sun dipped low, casting a warm glow across the room, David sat back, speechless, watching the community flourish. Zoe plopped down beside him, her cheeks still sticky from cotton candy. "See, Mr. David," he smiled, ruffling her hair tenderly. "It is." Feeling bold, he stood up, fidgeting with nervous energy. "Everyone, thank you for coming tonight. This building means a lot to me. My name's on the wall, but it's truly all of our names that matter." And the crowd erupted in cheers, hearts swelling with possibility. That night he felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. The hallways no longer felt just like memories of the past. They were symbols of community, glistening with potential. This, the connection, was what he had longed for. When the last guests left, David walked back through the now vibrant hall, glancing at the nameplate one more time. He wasn't ashamed anymore. This was his name, yes, but it belonged to something bigger: his roots, his past, and now his present. He felt a newfound sense of pride rise within him. The magic of this building and community was part of him. His heart swelled with love for the place he had once wanted to escape. Realizing that sometimes home isn't just where you start, it's where your journey truly unfolds. As silence enveloped the hallway, he took a deep breath, looking around at the richness of the memories they had created together. David McKinley wasn't just a name on a wall. It was a legacy, a story of connection, rebirth, and a place that would always feel like home. David paused, frozen mid-swipe with the mop, when he caught a glimpse of the nameplate on the wall. His heart skipped a beat. It took a moment to register, as if he were staring at a ghost from his past. "That's my name," he whispered, the words barely escaping his lips. The hallway felt both familiar and strange, every shadow casting echoes of memories he thought he'd long buried. He had taken this job to make ends meet while searching for something better, a tech position that would pull him away from the day-to-day grind into a world of innovation and progress. Cleaning the old building felt like a mundane afterthought, but in this instant it transformed into something much heavier. This corridor, with its peeling paint and flickering lights, was more than just a passage. It was a fragment of his history lodged deep in the fabric of his identity. David knelt, wiping sweat from his brow as he pulled the mop closer to the nameplate, dust and grime coating its edges. Why did he feel so drawn to this moment? Was it guilt, nostalgia, or something deeper, an unresolved connection he had ignored? A rush of emotion bubbled up as he thought of running through these halls as a child, laughter spilling into every corner. This place had been his playground, but it felt like a different world now, one he had left behind in pursuit of dreams. He finished mopping the floor, trying to focus on the task at hand, but the weight of that nameplate lingered in his mind. Each stroke of the mop became a battle between past and present, a tug-of-war between who he was and who he aspired to be. Would he always just be David from the McKinley building? The thought made him ache inside. As David's thoughts spiraled, a small voice intruded on his reverie. "Mr. David." He turned to find Zoe, the spirited little girl from the second floor, her pigtails bouncing as she bounded toward him, a bright smile etched across her face. In that moment, her innocence shattered his heavy thoughts. "Yeah, I'm just trying to make it nice for everyone," he replied, forcing a smile, though the corners of his mouth felt unnatural. Zoe asked, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Before he could think, he found himself agreeing. Of course. Together they swept and mopped, each push of the mop stirring up more dust than he expected. As they worked side by side, Zoe chattered about her day, about her favorite toys and the games she played with her friends. Her excitement was infectious, and with each story, layers of his own childhood peeled away, revealing the boy he once was, full of dreams, laughter, and unburdened hope. Zoe suddenly suggested, her eyes gleaming with the kind of enthusiasm only a child could muster. "We could invite everyone." The idea caught him off guard. A party, an overwhelming rush of doubt washed over him. What if no one came? What if his efforts fell flat like a party balloon slowly deflating? But then he looked at Zoe's beaming face, alive with excitement and hope. "Sure," David said, his voice rising with unexpected enthusiasm. A spark ignited within him, rekindling a flame that had flickered for too long. As they wiped down surfaces and picked up litter, they tossed ideas back and forth. He could visualize a festivity that would breathe life back into the building, a revival of connections that had long since frayed. They could make it a community cleanup day, a chance for neighbors to come together and transform the old hallway into a bright and welcoming space. With each passing day, David grew more immersed in the planning. He handwrote flyers, colorful and inviting residents to join in a community cleanup in celebration of their home. The act of creating those flyers felt like stitching together a broken quilt. He was piecing together fragments of connection, building a sense of belonging that had faded away. But doubt still loomed. Would people respond? Would anyone even show up? Those fears crept in, whispering that he was being naive. He had moved on, hadn't he? Was it foolish to reach out when he had spent so long trying to escape? When the day of the event finally arrived, David was a bundle of nerves. He scrambled to set up tables, decorate with colorful balloons, and prepare snacks. Zoe buzzed around him like a little bee, her energy a stark contrast to his anxiousness. As the first neighbors began to trickle in, his heart raced. Old faces appeared, hesitant yet curious. Some exchanged quiet smiles, some looked deeply uncertain, strangers slipping into something familiar yet worn. But with every smiling face that entered, he felt a surge of hope. "Mr. David," Zoe shouted, sprinting over with her arms full of colorful streamers. David beamed at her, feeling a whirl of gratitude and excitement. He set to work hanging the streamers, each knot a vow to create community, a knotted promise of connection. His fingers trembled as he tied them up. The hallway, once dim and neglected, was transforming right before his eyes, becoming a space filled with light and possibility. The laughter began to echo along the walls as more families joined the gathering. Children chased each other, parents caught up on lost time, and the air filled with warmth as everyone began sharing stories. David felt his nerves slacken. The energy in the room was vibrant, alive with connection. And then it happened. Mrs. Jennings, the gentle, wise lady who had lived in the building for decades, stepped forward. She paused, summoning courage from somewhere deep inside her heart. "You know," she began, her voice shaking just slightly, "this hallway used to mean something to all of us." As she spoke, David noticed a ripple of agreement wash over the room. Faces brightened as others around her began sharing their memories, the annual potlucks, the impromptu block parties, and the sense of togetherness that had fueled the spirit of the community. Filled with emotions that bubbled to the surface, David stood tall and found himself sharing memories of his own. "I remember," he said, "running through these hallways as if they were mine to conquer." The room erupted in laughter and nods. It felt surreal to belong, to connect over shared narratives that bound them all together. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light through the windows, David felt a transformative warmth fill the air, an energy that seemed to unify everyone present. He took a deep breath, letting the moment wash over him. What started as a simple act of cleaning had morphed into a revitalization of community and affirmation of relationships that had been neglected for too long. Suddenly, Zoe tugged on his shirt, pulling his attention. "Mister," she asked, her eyes wide with enthusiasm. "Absolutely. Tag." Her voice rang out like a melody, infectious optimism radiating from her. In that moment, they divided the crowd, and laughter filled the hall as parents and kids raced through the open space, chasing each other with wild abandon. David joined in, exhilarated by the joy around him. The hallway echoed with the symphony of laughter, of shouts of life. Each footstep felt like a heartbeat, each laugh a reminder of warmth echoing through the walls. As the festivities unfolded around him, David took a step back, absorbing the energy that swirled through the air. He gazed at the nameplate again, but this time it held a different meaning. It wasn't a reminder of a past he wanted to escape. It became a beacon of hope, a testament to the legacy of community, friendship, and history. The night felt electric, charged with connection and nostalgia. People were sharing food, stories, and laughter, memories weaving new threads of kinship. David's heart swelled with pride as he realized how easily a place could come alive when its spirit was acknowledged and embraced. Hours later, as tired yet happy faces began to depart, David stood in the hallway, basking in the warmth of what they had created together. Every smile, every laugh had forged a new chapter in the building's story, not just his story, but everyone's. "Thank you for organizing this," Mrs. Jennings said as she passed, a soft smile gracing her lips. With those words, a wave of relief washed over him. The doubts that had plagued him melted away, leaving a sense of clarity. "I couldn't have done it without everyone," he replied, feeling incredulous. The hallway no longer felt empty or cold. Instead, it pulsed with life, laughter, and fresh memories. As the last guests departed, David noticed Zoe heading toward the stairs. "Hey Zoe," he called out, feeling a mix of love and gratitude for the little girl who had sparked this journey. She shouted back, her energy endless as she raced over. While they picked up remnants of the evening cups, crumbs, bits of streamer silence blanketed them, but it was a comfortable silence filled with satisfaction and fulfillment. David paused to look at the nameplate one last time. He said, kneeling beside her, "That's my name, but it's more than just mine." Zoe looked at the nameplate, awe in her eyes. "Exactly," David said, feeling empowered. As they finished cleaning, David's heart felt lighter. Somehow, the struggles he had faced and the dreams that had eluded him felt less daunting now. Standing in the hallway, advocating for connection, he had discovered something essential, that home is not just about a place, it's about the people, the stories, the laughter shared. As the final light flickered off, he stepped back into the warmth of the night, leaving behind a hallway that had become a gateway to unity, a canvas of shared dreams, and most importantly, a reminder that he was never truly alone. The name McKinley would forever be linked to a rejuvenated spirit, treasuring the memories they'd created together. And just like that, the cleanup, the laughter, and the legacy made him feel whole once more. David stood at the entrance of the dimly lit hallway, the mop in one hand and a bucket of soapy water in the other. As he stepped inside, a wave of nostalgia washed over him, but he didn't have time to dwell on it. His job was to clean, and the floor was grimy with the dirt of countless steps taken over the years. The fluorescent lights flickered above him, casting an eerie glow that seemed to dance with the shadows. As he began to scrub the floor, he couldn't help but feel a strange connection to this place. It was an old building, filled with stories and memories. With each swish of the mop, he could almost hear the laughter of children echoing through the corridors, the whispers of neighbors catching up. But today it felt like just another day at a dead-end job, one he had taken out of necessity while he looked for something better. Yet in this moment, something pulled his attention to the wall just a few feet away. That's when he saw it, a small, tarnished nameplate fixed to the wall. David leaned closer, wiping away some of the dirt, and his heart skipped a beat. His name staring back at him in faded letters, his breath caught in his throat. This building held his name. He felt a rush of confusion and nostalgia collide. Memories flashed in his mind like a quick slideshow, playing tag in the hallways, the smell of his mother's cooking wafting in from the communal kitchen, friends who had come and gone. Wow, he whispered to no one in particular. He ran his fingers over the name, feeling a mix of pride and embarrassment. He hadn't thought about this place in years, and now it felt as if it was staring him in the face, reminding him of who he was and who he had tried to leave behind. David stepped back, the mop feeling heavier in his hand. What did it mean to be David McKinley? He had worked so hard to establish himself, to find his place in a world far removed from here. Cleaning this hallway felt like a step backwards, not forward, yet a flicker of something deep inside stirred. Could this be more than just a job? As he mopped in silence, he tried to focus. He watched as the water swirled around the bucket, absorbing the dirt and grime, but with every swipe, those old memories crept back in. The laughter, the sense of community, the very essence of what it had meant to belong here. Mr. David turned to see Zoe, a vibrant little girl from the second floor, with her pigtails bouncing as she ran toward him. Her cheerful smile cut through the heaviness in his heart, a bright contrast to the somber memories. "Yeah, Zoe, I'm just cleaning up," he replied, forcing a smile. She asked, tilting her head with curiosity. For a brief moment, he looked into her eyes filled with pure, unfiltered joy. A light sparked within him, sure. With Zoe's enthusiastic help, the chore suddenly transformed. The mop became a paintbrush, sweeping color and life back into the dullness of the hallway. Together they laughed, joked, and filled the silence with innocent chatter, each moment dissolving the weight pressing on David's heart. As they cleaned, Zoe began sharing stories about her time at the playground, her favorite cartoons, and the cookies her mom baked. David listened intently, soaking in her youthful perspective like a sponge. With every word, he felt the layers of adult worries peel away. And then Zoe's eyes lit up as she said, "Let's throw a party. We could invite everyone in the building." David hesitated for a moment. Party? He could feel a knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. What if no one showed? What if it all fell flat? But he looked at Zoe, the way her face glowed with excitement, and suddenly inspiration struck. Okay, he declared, feeling a rush of energy. The idea clung to David like a buoy in stormy seas, and for the first time he felt the tug of responsibility to revive the sense of community that once thrived in this building. They finished cleaning, buzzed with plans of fun things to do. In the following days, David took to every floor, knocking on doors and inviting whoever he could find to join them for a community cleanup and celebration. He proclaimed, enthusiasm flowing freely from him. Some neighbors nodded in agreement, but others looked skeptical. It was as though they hadn't heard those words in years. Yet the more he knocked, the more connections he uncovered. Old memories of happier times resurfaced in casual conversations about barbecues, game nights, and shared stories. Some residents shared their own plans, offering to bring food or games, lending more strength to the burgeoning idea. David felt a flicker of hope as he prepared for the event. He was no longer just a guy mopping floors, he was piecing together a community. The days of preparation turned into a blur, filled with laughter, flyers, and a rekindling of long-lost connections. Finally, the day arrived, and David buzzed with anticipation, excitement mingled with a pang of fear. He set up tables filled with snacks, decorations hanging from the ceiling. The hallway, once grimy and lifeless, was awash in vibrant colors. As the first neighbors trickled in, David's heart raced. Old faces appeared, hesitant yet curious, taking in the scene. Some offered warm smiles, while others watched closely as if waiting for the magic to fade. Zoe bounced around, her energy contagious. She shouted, darting to grab another cupcake. Little by little, families began to blend, the laughter grew, fanning out across the hallway like wildfire. Children hopped and skipped, playing games, while adults began to reconnect. In that whirlwind of joy, David felt something shift inside him. The memories of childhood flashed back, the laughter, the warmth, the sense of belonging once more. It was as if the very building had opened its heart, inviting him back into the fold. And then, of course, there was Mrs. Jennings, the kind elderly woman, a fixture of the building, stepped forward to say a few words. "It's been so long since we've shared moments like these," she said, her voice quaking with joy. Her words resonated through the crowd, and David felt the warmth of shared experience bond everyone together. They didn't just live under one roof, they were woven into a tapestry of stories, laughter, and memories. That night, as families drifted home and the hallway quieted, he stood there surrounded by plates and cups, piecing together the remnants of an unforgettable day. Zoe plopped down beside him, her cheeks sticky with candy. She exclaimed, her eyes sparkling bright. "Yes, it really was," David replied, soaking in the tranquility. He eyed the nameplate once more, no longer feeling its weight. It stood as a beacon, uniting the past with the present, a reminder that he had not just cleaned the hallway, he had carved out a space for belonging, for connection, for shared joy. David realized it didn't matter how often he tried to leave this place behind. Even from the shadows, it had shaped him, reminding him of who he truly was. The mop had transformed into a tool of revival, a simple act of cleaning revealing a deeper truth. As night settled in, he reflected on the building that held his name and his history. Being David McKinley meant more than just an echo from the past. It was about building relationships, shaping memories, and forging a sense of community that transcended time. In those moments, amidst remnants of laughter and joy, he discovered something life-altering, that home doesn't just signify a physical space. It embodies the love, laughter, and connections woven between its walls. The name wasn't a burden, it was a legacy. As David turned off the lights and stepped back into the hallway, he felt the closing chapter of a meaningful day, yet it was a beginning too. He had reclaimed his past, embraced the ties that felt so tight and real, and breathed new life into the corridors that had nurtured him. That night he went to bed lighter, filled with purpose. He had once thought of this place as merely a stepping stone, but it had become the foundation upon which he would build the future. And in his heart, David McKinley would always resonate with the echoes of home. The nameplate wasn't just words on a wall, it was a symbol of belonging, a promise that he would always be a part of something bigger. The hallway shone anew, alive with the laughter and memories of community, a place he was proud to call home once more. He was mopping the floor when he noticed it. A glint of metal caught David's eye just as he pushed the mop across the faded tiles of the old hallway. He paused, the mop frozen mid-stroke, and leaned closer, squinting against the flickering fluorescent light. There it was, a nameplate almost obscured by years of grime and dust. His chest tightened as he read it again, disbelief washing over him like ice water. This hallway, this building held his name. A rush of memories flooded his mind, childhood laughter, neighbors coming together, moments of joy buried under the weight of adulthood. For a fleeting moment, it felt like the walls were whispering secrets long forgotten. He had taken this job to pay the bills, to scrape by in a city that demanded everything and offered little in return. Cleaning the dingy hallways of an aging apartment building wasn't how he imagined his life turning out. Yet here he was, staring at the nameplate of a boy who used to run these very halls with a sense of wonder. As David resumed mopping, the water squeaked against the floor, each stroke heavier than the last. What did it mean to be David McKinley? It wasn't just a name, it was a history, a past he thought he had left behind when he moved out. The dreams he had chased in the bustling city felt distant now, swallowed by the very building he had once wanted to escape. Mr. David. David turned to see Zoe, the sprightly little girl from the second floor, sprinting down the hall, her pigtails bouncing like cheerful flags. She came to a halt, staring at him wide-eyed, shaking off remnants of the world like a burst of sun after a storm. "Hey Zoe, just cleaning," he replied, mustering a smile. Her energy was contagious, and for a moment the weight on his heart lifted. She asked, her face radiating excitement. Before he could think it through, he nodded, sure. With Zoe at his side, they began wiping down the dusty surfaces. The mop morphed from a monotonous chore into a tool of connection. They laughed and joked, breathing life back into the somber hallway. Zoe danced around, jabbering about her favorite cartoons and the snacks she had at home, weaving tales filled with imagination and innocence. But as they cleaned, David couldn't shake the pull of those memories. Each swish of the mop brought back visions of his younger self running in and out of doors, climbing stairs two at a time, laughter spilling out like liquid sunshine. This hallway was filled with stories, friendships, and moments of joy. His heart ached at the thought that he had pushed it all aside in pursuit of something larger. "Mister," Zoe called, her eyes lighting up with a sudden idea. "Why don't we have a party?" The mention of a party sparked a whirlwind of anxiety in David. What if nobody came? What if he made a fool of himself? But looking at Zoe, beaming with hope, a sense of determination began to swell within him. "Great idea, Zoe," and just like that, an idea was born. The very thought of bringing together the scattered pieces of this community ignited something deep within him. With renewed energy, they dove into planning. Over the next few days, David became a whirl of action. He crafted invitations, colorful markers scribbling enthusiastic notes, community cleanup and celebration. With every door he knocked on, he could feel the thrill of possibilities swirling around him. Most people smiled cautiously when he invited them, reminiscing about the days when everyone gathered for potlucks or block parties. "It's been years since we've done something like this," a neighbor would say, nostalgia punctuating their words. Others expressed uncertainty, but David pressed on, buoyed by the vision Zoe had ignited within him. Time slipped by, and the day of the event finally arrived. David felt a mix of excitement and fear as he set up tables filled with colorful decorations, snacks, and drinks. The hallway transformed, vibrant and alive, shedding its cobwebs of neglect. Zoe flitted around like a fairy, laughing and helping David tie streamers to the walls. She shouted, and her energy was electric. As the first families trickled in, David's heart raced. Some were familiar faces, others were strangers. People stepped cautiously into the hallway, looking around as if they hadn't realized how neglected the space had become. But as laughter began to ripple through the air, the collective warmth felt like a bonfire igniting. "Mr. David," Zoe rallied, pulling him from his thoughts. "Yeah, tag," she declared, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Before long, laughter filled the air, echoing off the walls that had been silent for too long. Children dashed through, popping out from behind tables, adults reluctantly joining in, smiles transforming anxious faces into ones filled with joy. David couldn't believe what was unfolding before him, a reawakening of community spirit. He joined in the games, the once distant memories flooding back. Each tag and giggle felt like a wave crashing over him, filling him with warmth he had thought was lost. He felt all the years of struggle and self-doubt fade into the background. Then Mrs. Jennings, the elderly, kind-hearted neighbor, stepped forward. "I remember when this building was alive with laughter and love," she said, her voice quivering slightly, carrying the weight of years. As she shared her memories, the crowd listened intently, nodding in agreement. They were connected, they had all shared in something beautiful. David felt the unity building, the fabric of the community stitching itself back together. David took a breath, feeling a swell of hope. "Let's bring this back. Let's make it a tradition," he proposed, glancing across the smiling faces. "We can gather, share stories, laughter." He paused, unsure of himself for a second. The laughter that erupted buoyed him even higher, and suddenly he was no longer daunted by the thought of it. "Yes," David laughed with them, further strengthening the bond. As the sun began to set, casting golden rays through the hallway, David found himself smiling. The sounds of joy wrapped around him like a warm embrace, children's laughter, the bustle of neighbors sharing stories, friends catching up after years. After hours of connection and celebration, people began to drift home, but the atmosphere remained electric. As Zoe and David helped clean up the mess, he realized something monumental had happened. This building, whose name he had worn like a burden, had transformed. And just like that, Mr. Zoe said, her voice projecting her unending enthusiasm. He chuckled, warmth filling his chest. "Yes, we did, Zoe, but it wasn't just us." The hallway no longer felt just like a corridor of memories fading into the past. It had turned into a vibrant space filled with laughter and the possibility of new stories. As he tidied up, David stole a glance at the nameplate again. This was no longer just a name above a door. It represented a legacy, a connection that reached down to the very roots of his being. He felt a sense of pride wash over him. This name, which had haunted him for so long, was not just a reminder of what he had wanted to escape. It was also a bridge reminding him that he could create a future while embracing his past. That evening, as he locked up the doors and walked out into the world, David realized something profound. He was no longer just a worker cleaning hallways. He was David McKinley, a name that resonated with life, connection, and community. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he felt a warmth in his heart. The community had been revived, and so had he. That hallway wasn't just a place he had claimed. It was a canvas where he had painted hope, memories, and belonging, reshaping his understanding of what home meant. In that moment, he understood that he would carry this experience with him forever. "Thank you," he whispered to the building, as if it might hear him. And just like that, David walked away, feeling lighter, filled with purpose, ready to carve a future shaped by his past but driven by the hope of togetherness. The journey was just beginning, and he was finally ready to embrace it fully. David was lost in thought as he mopped the floor, the rhythmic swish of the mop breaking only occasionally for the scrape of his shoes against the gritty tiles. The hallway of the old apartment building was dark, lit only by flickering fluorescent lights overhead. Dust motes danced in the air like tiny stars floating in a void, and he couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped in a place he once called home. But today, as he scrubbed at stubborn stains, something caught his eye. The corner of the wall near the entrance was worn and scuffed, yet something gleamed faintly amidst the grime. Curiosity overtook him, and he set the mop aside, kneeling to inspect the object. It was a small nameplate, its surface almost invisible beneath layers of dust and neglect. His heart raced as disbelief washed over him. This was his name on the building he had grown up in, the very place he had fought to leave behind. The significance hit him like a wave. Memories flooded back, some cherished, some painful. He recalled the laughter, the rows of children playing tag, the neighbors bickering over trivial matters, the sound of doors slamming echoing through the hall. It was a world that had felt so vibrant, and now it was just a whisper, a ghost lingering in time. Feeling suddenly vulnerable, David stood, mopping up the water that splashed onto the floor. Despite wanting to feel proud of the name, he felt a sense of shame clawing at him. What had he become? Here he was, mopping floors, scrubbing away stains in a place that bore his name, but not in the way he had once envisioned. He shook his head, pushing the thoughts aside. "Just focus on the cleaning," he muttered to himself. Each stroke of the mop felt heavier. It was as if he was pushing against more than just dirt. He was pushing against expectations, dreams, and a past he thought he had escaped. Just then, a high-pitched voice broke his train of thought. "Mr. David." He turned to see Zoe, the little girl from the second floor. Her pigtails bounced as she skipped toward him, a brightness in her eyes that cut through the fog of his melancholy. She stood there, hands on her hips, a cape of confidence wrapped around her. "Cleaning," he replied, forcing a smile. She asked, her enthusiasm contagious. Before he could say no, he found himself nodding. Sure. As they worked side by side, mopping and dusting, David felt a flicker of energy igniting within him. Zoe laughed and prattled on about her day, sharing stories of school and her favorite toys. The sound of her joy was infectious. It reminded David of himself as a child, naughty, carefree, filled with possibilities. "Mr. David," she said suddenly, a bright idea lighting up her face. "What if we have a party?" The idea caught him off guard. A party? For a second he hesitated. What if nobody came? What if it turned into a disaster? But as he looked into Zoe's eager eyes, filled with innocence and hope, something began to change inside him. "You know what? That's a great idea." With newfound determination, they set off to plan the party. The very thought of bringing people together sparked something deep within him, the desire to reclaim a piece of his past and maybe even reshape it. Over the next few days, David poured himself into organizing the festivities, feeling a rush of adrenaline with each passing hour. He made colorful flyers, vibrant and inviting. With Zoe's help, they went door to door, inviting neighbors to the community cleanup day, followed by a celebration. At first, people looked skeptical. One neighbor said, eyebrow raised, but his enthusiasm was infectious. He spoke of laughter, connection, and memories waiting to be made. Slowly, smiles replaced the frowns. Some even committed to bringing food or games, and gradually the building began to buzz with anticipation. The day of the event came against a backdrop of hope and nagging fear. David decorated the hall with streamers and balloons, transforming the dim corridor into something festive. The transformation felt surreal. He could almost hear the echo of laughter that had once filled the space, a promise of what was yet to come. When the first families trickled in, David's heart raced, old faces, hesitant yet curious. Some exchanged smiles, while others merely scanned the room as if trying to remember when they last felt a part of something. But as laughter began to bubble up like a fountain, the mood shifted. "Mr. David," Zoe's voice rang out, full of excitement. David laughed. "Absolutely. Tag," she declared, her voice bright and inviting. In no time, the hallway filled with joyful chaos. Children were running and giggling, their laughter bouncing off the walls, and before long the adults found themselves reluctantly joining in. David felt a warmth flooding his chest as he watched the scene unfold, a memory reborn. As he joined in the games, his senses flooded. The exuberance of the children mixed with the laughter of the adults, and David felt the burdens of adulthood slip away, leaving just joy in its place. The echo of memories past melded with the vibrant energy of now, and he began to feel not just as a cleaner but as a participant in something larger, a revival of community. Suddenly, Mrs. Jennings, the wise old neighbor who had lived in the building for decades, stood up. "You know," she began, her voice shaking slightly with emotion, "this hallway used to be filled with life." Her words struck a chord, resonating with everyone in the room. They all nodded, recalling those days filled with laughter, discussions in the lobby, and shared meals. David felt moved, the tide of nostalgia washing over him. A surge of courage bubbled up within him. "Let's keep this going," he called out, feeling the energy of the room swirling around him like a storm. The crowd erupted in applause, and Zoe bounced up and down in excitement. Yes, we can invite everyone. The joy that erupted was palpable, a whirlwind of laughter and affirmation. David's heart swelled with pride as he watched the people come together, the very fabric of the community weaving itself tighter. As the sun began to set, bathing the hallway in soft hues of gold, David stepped back, taking it all in a massive shift from the silence that had once consumed this space. This building, with its nameplate that had weighed heavily on him, was now alive again. After hours of fun, as families began to drift home, David stood amidst the remnants of the joyous day. The happiness echoed through him. He glanced around, the tables scattered with plates, laughter still wafting in the air, and Zoe plopped down beside him, her cheeks sticky with candy. "Mister," she exclaimed, her eyes glimmering with boundless joy. He chuckled, the corners of his mouth turning up. "You're right, Zoe." He took a moment to really absorb what had happened. The nameplate on the wall was no longer just a reminder of the boy he used to be. It was a symbol of what they had all built together, an acknowledgement of their shared roots and a promise of a prosperous future. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, David thought to himself as he glanced at the nameplate once more. He understood in that moment that the name David McKinley meant more than he had ever given it credit for. It encapsulated not just his past but the spirit of the community, a community eager to reclaim its vibrancy and warmth. As night settled around them, David felt a profound sense of purpose take hold. He was not just the boy running through these halls, he was a part of something larger, a connection that offered depth to his story. This building, once a reminder of stifled dreams, was now bursting with life. Tomorrow he would wake with a renewed vision, no longer focusing solely on escaping his past but instead reshaping it into something meaningful. He realized that not only had he cleaned a hallway, but he had also rekindled a spirit and breathed life into memories that lay dormant for far too long. In that moment of reflection, surrounded by remnants of laughter, he whispered, "Thank you," as if speaking to the walls themselves. And as he walked away, leaving the echoes of joy behind him, he felt lighter, filled with purpose. He was not just David McKinley anymore. He was an architect of his own story, ready to embrace the connections that would guide him forward. The mop glided silently across the floor, the bucket of soapy water sitting nearby, its surface rippling as David moved. A few flickering fluorescent lights above cast an eerie glow on the long, narrow hallway of the old apartment building. The air was stale, thick with memories of faded laughter and the weight of time gone by. As David scrubbed, lost in his thoughts, he felt a sudden jolt, a sharpness beneath his palm. Curiosity surged. He paused, pulled the mop back, and knelt down. There it was, hidden beneath layers of dust and dirt, a small, tarnished nameplate affixed to the wall. His heart raced as recognition hit him like a freight train. This was his name. He swallowed hard, a flood of memories rushing back, intertwining with disbelief. The hallway began to blur around him. Images of childhood chased each other, vibrant and vivid. Racing friends down these same tiles, the smell of his mother's cooking wafting through the air, the laughter of neighbors echoing like music in his ears. But now it felt different, like an echo in an empty room. He stood up, pushing a hand through his hair, feeling the weight of it, all a burden he hadn't acknowledged until now. David had moved out, seeking a brighter future in the chaotic bustle of the city, eager to slip away from the shadows of this past. Wasn't this hallway supposed to be just a chapter he'd closed long ago? Yet here he was, scrubbing floors in the very place that carried his name. With a frustrated grunt, he resumed mopping, the rhythmic sound of the mop swishing against the floor mixing with his turbulent thoughts. He felt the heaviness of unrealized dreams clinging to him, a cloud hanging over his head. The reality of his life felt suffocating. He had imagined great things for himself, but that shimmer of ambition had dimmed to a dull sparkle. The haunting echoes of the past played in his mind, a cacophony of joy twisted with the guilt of abandoning this space, this name, this life. Could he really be David McKinley again, or had he outgrown it like an old pair of shoes? Just then, a familiar voice broke through his reverie. Mr. David. He turned to see Zoe, the bright little girl from the second floor, her pigtails bouncing as she came running toward him. Her joy-filled energy cut through the haze hanging over him, and for a second he felt lighter. "Hey Zoe, just cleaning up," he replied, managing a smile. Her enthusiasm was so genuine that he couldn't resist. Sure. As they worked side by side, mopping and dusting, David noticed the joy that surged within him. We laughed, shared stories, and wove tales of her day. Her carefree spirit was infectious, a stark contrast to the heaviness he'd been carrying. "Mr. David," Zoe said suddenly, her eyes wide with excitement, "what if we have a party?" The idea caught him off guard. A party, the thought made his stomach churn. What if nobody came? What if he made a fool of himself? But staring into Zoe's bright eyes, filled with unbridled hope, ignited a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time: determination. He exclaimed, feeling an intoxicating rush of energy pulse through him. In that moment, a spark ignited, an idea blooming like a flower breaking through concrete. They both jumped into planning, the dream of a gathering taking form. Over the next few days, David poured his heart into organizing the event. He whipped up colorful flyers, each one practically bursting with enthusiasm. Community cleanup and celebration. The joy of his childhood felt like a whisper urging him forward. As he knocked on doors, inviting neighbors, he felt a strange connection with each interaction. Some exchanged skeptical glances, while others smiled, recalling old times spent together. "A party? It's been years since we've done that," one elderly neighbor remarked, nostalgia weaving through her words, and slowly that hope began to spread. The response was a blend of caution and excitement. People began to contribute ideas: potluck dishes, games for the kids, perhaps even old board games that had lay untouched for years. Each commitment felt like a thread weaving the community together, tangible links binding them to each other. Finally, the day of the event arrived, a buzz buzzing in the air. David stood in the hallway, setting up tables and snacks, a sense of purpose filling him. Zoe dashed around, helping with decorations, every bounce in her step echoing her excitement. Then came the moment when families began to arrive. David's heart raced as familiar faces edged into view, some from years gone by. Hesitant, they stepped into the hallway, scanning for the life they had long missed. As laughter began to bubble up, his own spirits lifted. "Mr. David," Zoe's voice rang out, bright as ever. Of course, tag. In no time, the hallway became a whirlwind of laughter and chaos. Children raced through, joyous laughter bouncing off the walls, while adults reluctantly joined in, smiles spreading across their faces. David felt the warmth of belonging wash over him like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then Mrs. Jennings, the kind-hearted elder of the building, stood up. "It's been so long since we've shared moments like these," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. Her words resonated. The collective embrace of memories poured out, touching the corners of their hearts. David felt the weight lift. He was not alone in this endeavor. He looked around at the faces, realizing they were not just neighbors anymore, they were friends connected by history. Courage surged within him. He called out, his voice steady. "Let's make this a regular thing." Cheers erupted from the crowd, invigorated by the possibility of rekindling those connections. Zoe beamed, her little hands clapping, adding fuel to the fire of excitement. As the party unfolded, David marveled at the joy filling the space. The hallway, once empty and silent, now pulsed with life, laughter, and warmth. Each smile brought him closer to unity he had never thought possible. And then, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the walls in golden light, David stepped back, taking it all in. Children were shrieking with laughter, adults mingling and reminiscing. In that moment of clarity, he realized he had found a piece of himself he thought was lost forever. After hours of celebration, as families began to trickle home, David surveyed the aftermath, scattered plates, remnants of laughter lingering in the air. Zoe plopped down beside him, her face smeared with icing. "Mister," he chuckled, a smile breaking free. David glanced at the nameplate once more, reflecting on the man who once felt burdened by it. Now it felt like a badge of honor, a reminder that sometimes the greatest journeys lead you back home. The cleaning of the hallway had turned into something much more profound, an unearthing of connection, validation, and community spirit. But then something caught his eye. Darkness pooled near the end of the hallway, the air shifted, and a heavy silence enveloped the space. David squinted, straining to see through the shadows. Suddenly a door slammed shut, echoing ominously through the now quiet corridor. David's heart raced. Who was still here? He stood up, moving toward the dim light, unease creeping up his spine like a whispering wind. The laughter that had filled the air mere moments ago felt distant, replaced by an echo of uncertainty. As he approached the door, he could feel the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. What lay beyond? His heart pounded in his chest, the thrill of curiosity battling with a nagging feeling of dread. He took a deep breath, reaching for the door handle. And just as he pushed it open, his phone buzzed in his pocket, a sudden sound startling him. He fished it out, glancing at the screen, and froze. The message read, "We need to talk." The words sent a chill down his spine. With his heart pounding, he glanced back at the hallway, now shrouded in shadows, and a sense of foreboding washed over him. What did this mean? Who was calling? He looked back at Zoe, still giggling in the aftermath of their celebration. But deep inside, a storm was brewing. He wasn't just David McKinley anymore. He was about to plunge into secrets that had lain hidden, waiting for the right moment to surface. And at that moment, he understood that this was only the beginning. The journey he had embarked on to reclaim his past was about to intersect with the mysteries of his present. Something was waiting just around the corner, and it would change everything. With a determined expression, he stepped into the unknown, ready to confront whatever lay ahead, fueled by the connection he had rekindled, embracing the shadows that awaited him in this old building that had always carried his name. This was his moment to uncover the truth, to face the fears that had haunted him for too long, and he wasn't about to back down now.